Christians often use the argument that everything has to have a beginning. So how do you explain that with God? Does he have a beginning or has he always existed?
That's a good question. So many believe in naturalism or materialism, that the universe self-created, just from mass energy and chemistry and physics work together and the universe just got itself by itself. Not many people have that kind of assumption, but let's assume that God created that universe, because many believe that God didn't create that universe. And as I said, the universe was just self-created, okay? But let's assume that God created that universe. So we ask that question, if God created the universe, who created God, who created that universe? And who created God, who created that universe? And we'll keep looping in a circle to go back to the first God who was created so he can create all the gods and all the way to the universe. Of course, that doesn't make any sense because we assume that God was created. And that's what we call it self-defeat. The question itself is self-defeated because the assumption that God was created is wrong. The question is wrong, and therefore there's no answer to that question because the assumption that God was created is wrong. God wasn't created. Through him, everything was created. God was there from the beginning. The verses in Colossians chapter 1, verse 15 to 18, explains that way better than even I can describe it. So let me read the verses for you, okay? Christ is the visible image of the invisible God. He existed before anything was created, and he is supreme over all creation. For through him, God created everything in the heavenly realms and on earth. He made the things we can see and the things we cannot see, such as the thrones, kingdoms, rulers, and authorities in the unseen world. Everything was created through him and for him. He existed before anything else, and he holds all creation together. Christ is also the head of the church, which is his body. He's the beginning, supreme over all who rise from the dead. So he's first in everything. So the assumption that God was created, that's wrong. And actually the Greeks were interested in this kind of stuff like years ago, like 300 BC, 400 BC. Like they were interested to find out the things that were created and the things that already were from the beginning. And what we call from the Christian perspective, that we believe that God wasn't created, God was always existed. John, the Gospel of John, actually chapter 1, the very first chapter, verse 1 to 3, says the same thing. John is saying, in the beginning, the Word already existed. The Word was with God, and the Word was God. He existed in the beginning with God. God created everything through him, and nothing was created except through him. So what we read in Colossians and John is almost saying the same thing. God was already there. He wasn't created. In the Council of Nicaea in 325, that was actually a brilliant thing that many denominations now, they are saying the same thing. That's what we we got from that Council of Nicaea in 325, that they were doubting the deity of God and the incarnation of God and the persona of Jesus, the persona in Greek word. And they were saying God wasn't begotten. Basically, he was created. And they came with that statement that we all sharing now, most of the big denominations, that Jesus was begotten, not created. You know this in that statement. And that came from the Council of Nicaea. So we believe the same thing, that God was already existed. Through him, it came everything that we see.